Moments as big as this and as small as bureaucratic frustration were being repeated across the country. Though we now understand the vast design of the scheme created to bilk people for debts they never actually owed, this was all brand new at the time. Each person who opened a letter or discovered too late that a letter had been sent to an old address did so alone. Their instinct would either be that something had gone wrong and it would be an administrative nightmare to fix it, or that the government knew what it was doing and that they, as an individual, must have made some kind of mistake. In any case, the unequalled might of government say-so met people one by one, found them alone, and resolved to keep them that way. Confusion was a key element of the system. The as-yet anonymous crafters of this debt rattle had counted, quite literally as they did the sums for savings to the budget, on people giving up without a fight. And so the letters found people alone and funneled them individually into the gaping mouth of government machinery. Infrequently, they found their way to people who might have understood the perversity of what was being asked. But not even these chaperones were capable of much help. Administrative law lecturer and La Trobe University academic Darren O'Donovan was teaching students about the very foundational and, no doubt equally thrilling, principles of admin law when a real-world case study came to see him. When I walked into my office, it boiled down to one of my students, upset, looking for an extension on an assignment just before Christmas 2016, Dr. O'Donovan says. And that's the first time I had come across what had been let loose, which is astonishing, and it was remarkable. The student just had the initial letter, the 21 days to reply or we do this letter. It was a pretty astonishing letter to such an extent that my initial reaction was it was a head fake. O'Donovan tried to big up his subject by walking his student through the basic principles of admin law they'd just finished studying. The lecturer knew the government needed to figure out the student's fortnightly income in order to correctly raise a debt, and based on the information they'd provided, they seemed to have just plucked a figure out of nowhere. They don't have it, he says, recalling that realization. They just don't have it. The letters were a luxury by some standards. If a person was still receiving welfare and hadn't seen the original initiation letters advising them of an apparent discrepancy between tax office records and their Centrelink reporting, the government just started taking money from their below-poverty line income support. One person, in and out of homelessness at the time, discovered this was happening when $150 a fortnight started coming out of their $700 a fortnight payment. When they were able to find a place to live, the rent was $450 a fortnight, leaving them with next to nothing for food, bills to survive. Others would find out when they lodged annual tax returns and had the entire amount, thousands of dollars in most cases, taken by the government to pay a debt about which they had never been informed. Then the government added family tax benefit lump sum payments to the list of things it could requisition in service of a fake debt. In 2015, a mother with a 1-year-old baby got one of the rare Centrelink telephone calls to tell her she owed $25,000 relating to an Austudy payment she received 3 years earlier, while also working casually as an executive assistant. She had sent in her payslips to Centrelink at the time to avoid precisely this problem. The calls were almost daily from Dun & Bradstreet, debt collectors, demanding payment. I was an absolute mess, she says. My husband worked away from home, so I was dealing with these constant calls of harassment and a 1-year-old baby. I was threatened with jail time and my daughter being put into care if I didn't start paying back the money. I cried on each phone call I had with them, pleading for more information. Gareth Morgan didn't get his letter until he logged into the MyGov platform to lodge a tax return and found it sitting there, glowing with radioactive threat. I was blocked from completing the online form as I disputed the calculation of my gross income by Centrelink, he says. The online form misled me into reporting income to Centrelink for periods that I was not claiming payments. Some people received their letters by registered mail, a belated attempt by government to track who was opening the post, and by proxy, if it never arrived.